Hey guys, and welcome back to More English with Dry. Today, the first of our revision activities. This one is focused on inspector calls, and I hope that you find it helpful. Our first revision challenge is going to be based on surrealist paintings. Your task is going to be simple. You're going to be shown a series of surrealist paintings. Now, surrealism is worth looking up just because it's fascinating, but it essentially means in art or in literature, the representation of something that is not real, or rather something that takes elements of reality but presents them in a confusing or a shocking way. What you're going to have to do with these paintings is pause the video and write as many connections to the play in inspector calls as you can think of. So I'll put a picture up, you pause the video, and then you write down in your books or your notepads all of the ways that they connect to the play. Now, this can be absolutely anything. Any aspect. It could be a character, it could be a theme, it could be an object, really anything that your imagination can make of it. That's what it can connect to. After 5 minutes, unpause the video, and then you can go onto and you can wait, and I will show you all of the things that have occurred to me. Now, this is not all of the things there could be. There are no right answers here at all, because in English there are no finite number of right answers, and there are also no wrong answers. There are stupid answers, but sometimes they're the best ones. But this is just to try and get your minds going, a little bit of gentle revision for an inspector calls. Okay, so here is the first image. The painting is The Song of Love by Giorgio de Chirico. I'm sure I pronounced that wonderfully. You've got 5 minutes to make as many connections between this painting and the play as you can. It's time to pause it and go. Okay, hopefully you have paused for 5 minutes. Now, if you sit back and listen, I'll explain to you all of the things that occurred to me from this painting. Firstly, the grand and impressive statue looks almost as though it could occupy a place on display in the Burlings' home. Usually, aristocratic or upper-class houses have some form of artwork or statues, and this head to me looks exactly like the sort of thing the Burlings could have in their hall. And it reminds us, I thought, that the Burlings love to show off their wealth and their success, especially Arthur. You'll remember when he arrogantly starts talking about how the cook should be thanked for their great meal, almost as a way of saying, remember, we're rich enough to have a cook. And also the unchanging emotion of the statue makes me think of Arthur, Sybil, and Gerald, who refuse to accept any responsibility for Eva Smith's death at all. Secondly, this spherical thing at the bottom could represent the Earth. It could symbolize the inspector's message that everyone is connected and the metaphor of us all being members of one body. The final thing that interested me in this image was the glove. It brings to mind the inspector because, in my head, police inspectors and detectives are often wearing leather gloves, and it reminds us of how he investigates and examines the Burlings and Gerald. But slightly more subtly, hands in literature often represent actions. Therefore, the glove could also link to the idea that the Burlings and Gerald have all freely chosen to mistreat Eva Smith, because they have power, which is afforded to them by their high social status. The lack of a second glove could also represent that there's no equivalent freedom on the part of Eva Smith. She cannot do what she wants either. The glove is only on one hand, so to speak. Only the Burlings have it, not her. Okay, you should be getting comfortable with the idea of what I'm asking you to do. Here's image number 2. This one is called Sleep by Salvador Dali. We're going to see a few images of paintings of his. Again, 5 minutes to make as many connections as you can between this painting and an inspector calls. Pause it and go. Okay, hopefully you got a good number of things in there. I'll just quickly run through what this picture made me think of. Firstly, the face here has its eyes shut, and that links to ignorance, so specifically the ignorance of the Burling family and Arthur kind of most accurately. It also shows that they are choosing to turn a blind eye to those around them that are suffering, or ignoring the fact that they actually have an impact on their lives. They don't want to see them, so they're keeping their eyes shut. However, I noticed that the lips are also stitched together, and this could represent the working classes like Eva Smith, who were given no voice in the play. We'll all famously remember that no matter how big a character she is, she hasn't got a single speaking line. Every time that people like her attempt to speak or stand up for themselves, like the strike she brings out, they're quickly silenced by the Burlings. And this is symbolic of the working classes in general in 1912. They were trying to rise up against the status quo, but they were having a really hard time doing it because they just couldn't find their voice, or they were not being listened to. Finally, I noticed that the sticks all appear to be propping up the face, and this could symbolize to me that the upper classes actually rely on the workers to support them. It's no secret that most societies rely on the majority of people who are the ones who do all the work. If you think about factories that actually create and build things, nothing would be done if not for the men and women in these factories actually building them. Of course, it's the people, the small minority who own these things that actually get all the money. But it reminds us that they need them. Of course, when Eva Smith arranges the strike and she and a lot of the other workers don't go in, Berling starts to lose money, which is why he's so scared of things like strikes and socialism. The face is also heavy and vast, whereas the sticks look pretty fragile to me, and this could suggest that the burden being placed on the working classes is too great, and that those at the top rely too heavily on them, and also that there is every chance that they could break at any point. Okay, painting 3. This one is an untitled work by Rafał Olbinski. Again, 5 minutes. On you go. All right, let's see what some of the things that I picked out here. Now, the two birds trapped in this sort of hat cage could be Eva and Sheila. The fact they seem to be trapped in prison belonging to a faceless man, a wealthy man by the look of what he's wearing, kind of connotes the manner in which the patriarchy oppressed all women. It's worth remembering in this play that yes, Eva Smith is the one who is treated the least well, but actually, Sybil and Sheila don't have all that much freedom either. They have a lot more than Eva Smith, but in general, overwhelmingly powerful are Arthur, Gerald, and Eric. And actually, women in this time period, regardless of who they were, had very few opportunities to thrive on their own. And they are all, one way or the other, possessions of men. You just look at how Sheila is kind of swapped between her father and Gerald in the beginning of the play. The two birds, though, interested me because they could also, to me, represent the dual identity of Eva Smith and Daisy Renton. The cage they're in could suggest the way in which Eric and Gerald both metaphorically imprison her into being a mere object. They both keep her. Gerald literally keeps her in an apartment that he goes to visit when he wants, and Eric traps her by impregnating her. And so, therefore, she's very much imprisoned by them and is purely an object for their sexual gratification whenever they want it. And so that could be what is, that suggested that to me. Thirdly, the ghostly face coming out of the clouds that obscures the face of the man, to me, could be the ghost of Eva Smith. And it reminds us that actually she is going to haunt Eric and possibly Gerald for the rest of well, certainly Eric's life because of what he did to her. And therefore, perhaps it's going to be something that is most important in his mind forevermore, exactly what he did. And then finally, the small boat in the kind of background of the image could literally be the Titanic, which of course Berling famously, ignorantly says is absolutely unsinkable. And this dramatic irony is something Priestley uses a lot in that section. He talks about Berling saying there'll be no war, etc., etc. And it's just a reminder to me that Priestley sets Berling up in this way as an ignorant man who is wrong about nearly everything he says. Image number 4 is this absolutely mad one. This is called The Burning Giraffe by Salvador Dali. Again, you've got 5 minutes. Make as many connections between this painting and the play as you can. Pause the video and go. Okay. Now, this one stumped me for quite a while because there is a lot going on. But just a few things occurred to me. Firstly, there are a lot of open drawers in the figure in the foreground. The open drawer to me represents the idea that the Berling secrets have been exposed for the audience to see. Despite their attempts to cover up their appalling actions, they've been laid out in the open and could lead to a public scandal. I say could lead because, of course, Arthur and Sybil are desperately trying to cover it up at the end. But there is always the chance that the inspector, the second inspector who we hear is going to come, will publicly out them. Secondly, there is the burning giraffe that's on fire, but everyone seems unaware of this giraffe that's on fire. And this, to me, is quite similar to the fact that a lot of people weren't aware of the true suffering of the working classes in 1912, and how oblivious people like the Burlings and Gerald were to their suffering. The fire represents how the problems are only increasing rather than getting better, as Burling kind of ignorantly declares in Act 1. And then finally, the other figure on the right, to me, seems to be holding sort of a bloody dagger. I mean, obviously it could be anything, but that's, fits in with my idea that the whole painting represents fire, blood, and anguish, which is what we see variously across the whole painting. And that's the threat the inspector gives to the Burlings before he leaves, that if they don't learn their lesson, they'll be taught it. And of course, that is fire, blood, and anguish means World War I, which is the literal punishment for British society, if you like. But then also, of course, the potential divine punishment. Now, whether or not Priestley believed in God is a matter for debate, but it's worth noting that there's definitely that double meaning in what the inspector says. Okay, the final one. Again, we're going to Salvador Dali. This is called The Persistence of Memory, a very famous image. 5 more minutes, one last time. Pause the video, and off you go. Okay, one more time. This is some of the stuff that occurred to me. The presence of a lot of clocks suggests the frequency with which the Burlings and Gerald abused Eva Smith. It happened a lot of times. The stopped clock is also a good symbol for her, as it kind of reminds to us that she was literally stopped by the suicide. Her time ran out, if you like, far before it should have done, but it very much ran out. Secondly, I noticed the fact that the clocks are all warped and changed. It's almost like they've melted in the sun. And this reminds us that time doesn't quite operate as it usually does in the play. Priestley plays with this idea of time, starting events all over again when the older generation have failed to learn their lesson through the arrival of a second inspector. Almost like the film Groundhog Day, which is definitely worth a watch. And then finally, let's talk about how Priestley uses the Russian theorist Ouspensky's theory of time. And this is why none of it happens chronologically in the play. We hear about what Sybil did before we hear about what Eric did, which is, of course, not how it was in real life. And therefore, it's non-linear and unchronological. His decision to manipulate time to such an extent serves to illustrate his point that nothing will change unless people pay attention to what is happening around them. And if they do not, then the same mistakes will keep being made again and again. I would argue that society today does still make some of these mistakes. Okay, guys, I hope this video was helpful. I will be making more revision challenges in the future. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.